Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. I have another horror-themed monster for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for all of you right now. Here in September, we're covering a specific horror-themed antagonist that you can use for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, along with his minions, and that would be Phantasmagoria. He is an operatic villain down to the point that he's actually made out of sound alone. He dresses in very fancy finery you'd expect on a theater stage, with a porcelain mask and a big hat. He is a riff off of the Phantom of the Opera. His goal is to create great art through human suffering, and the more suffering, the better. He covers a couple of different horror subgenres, the first of that being cosmic horror. He and his minions are nothing more than sound itself, with not exactly human emotions, but a definite malignant intent. He has a gothic horror element because he's very romantic in what he does in a dark sort of way. He is a patron of the arts and quite fancy, and also class horror because all of his connections are among the upper class of society that have no idea what he actually is and what he wants to do, and he will leverage that against heroes. Today we're going to cover one of his minions, the Allegro. Allegro is an Italian musical term for lively or cheerful, so keep that in mind. The Allegro is always in motion and it's hard to pin down its features. It wears bright colors, usually of a very flowery sort of finery, and it all kind of hangs over a crimson frame that comes down to little red points at the bottom because it doesn't actually have feet, and that finery is spattered here and there with blood from its victims. It never really changes that illusion except for when it has to. It does wear a Buddha style mask, but it's not tied in the back. The ties just kind of flutter along beside it, and its arm bones are always exposed. They look more like violin bows, except the string between is more for slashing than from playing. They do have very fine white gloves that never get stained with blood, but there's no wrist in between to attach it to its arm. An Allegro is an elemental born from the panicked breaths of a mortal that is caught in mania at that time, and it wants nothing more than to produce more of its own kind. As such, Phantasmagoria has a really hard time controlling these hyper elementals because they want to just get out there and kill, kill, kill. Of course, Phantasmagoria will point them at targets, but sometimes he just lets them out to run and work off some energy. And on those nights, the streets are thickly swathed with blood. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Allegro statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. An Allegro is a challenge rating 3 medium elemental that is chaotic neutral. It's got a low armor class, but a decent number of hit points. It does have a high speed of 50 feet. It is resistant to non-magical weapon damage, and it does have immunity to thunder damage, as well as a plethora of conditions. It has tremor sense as well. Ability-wise, it has incorporeal movement, kind of like a ghost because it is living sound, and mobile foe, which is more or less the mobility feat. Like the rest of its kind, it is vulnerable to silence, so anytime it's in the area of a silent spell, has to make a constitution save, or it has disadvantage on all of its rolls for the next round, and also cannot move. Action-wise, it does have multi-attack for 2 sonic slash attacks that do slashing damage and thunder damage. It does have a recharge ability of cutting notes. It becomes a column of destructive sound and rockets forward in a straight line that's 40 feet long and 10 feet wide. All targets in that line have to make a dexterity save or take some slashing damage and some thunder damage. Any creature that saves at 5 or less than the actual value is also deafened for the next minute. It does reform at the end of that line, and you can't make opportunity attacks against it during its attack. However, it is also restrained until the end of its next turn. And Allegro is a fine monster to throw at tier 1 level adventurers for sure. It can do a lot of damage very fast, but you can also use it to maybe butcher a crowd to spur your heroes to action if you need to do so. You can find it, rest of Phantasmagoria's minions, and hundreds more horror-themed monsters, all for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They're all perfectly free at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you're interested in the non-Dungeons & Dragons role-playing projects that I have, or the horror fiction that I write, that includes Grease Paint right there with the Killer Clown, or Phantasmagoria, which is well, it starts as a ghost story and it morphs into something else, you can always go to www.zacharyoshea.com. As always, thank you for your time and your attention, and have a wonderful rest of the day.